Now, whenever we see a list of riffs somewhere on the internet in text form or video form about riffs that guitar players need to know, we can always kind of anticipate what's going to appear on that list. There are a reason that these lists always contain classic riffs, be that from the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. Really, the 20th century was kind of the golden era for the guitar. That's when we basically had the birth of rock, the birth of metal, and all those great bands that make up those lists. But in this video, we're going to focus on things that happened after the year 2000. We're going to learn 7 of the best riffs from the 21st century. This video today is brought to you in partnership with Music Radar. If you want to read up about any of the riffs that I talk about in this video, there's a link down below in the description to a full lesson over on the Music Radar website. If you'd like to get the tabs for any of these riffs, you can scroll down to the description and hit the link for my Patreon page, where you will find PDF files with all of the guitar tabs for this lesson as well. So since the start of the 21st century, we've had a lot of great guitar music. We've had nu metal. Even though nu metal did come around in the 90s, it kind of rose to its biggest point in the early 2000s. We have the whole metalcore movement. The indie movement came back around. And these days we've got a great plethora of guitar-based music, be that blues, bluesy rock, anything. Basically, the last 20-something years, in my opinion, have been just as exciting for the electric guitar as the previous 30 or 40 years before that. But for whatever reason, a lot of these riffs never seem to make these lists. A few years ago, the guys at Music Radar put out a poll to the readers, that's you guys, to vote for your favorite riffs from the 21st century. And the results are listed below. There's a link over to the Music Radar website where you can read the top 50 riffs from the 21st century. I went through that list and picked 7 of my favorite riffs to teach you in this video. So gear-wise, I'm starting with my Vola Oz JRM guitar. That is plugged into the Blackstar Studio 10 6L6, which is running completely clean via the 2 Notes Torpedo Captor X. I will be using some overdrive in the video, and that's going to be coming from the Turnham Ridge overdrive. So we're going to kick things off now with the first riff. The riff we're going to learn is the riff from the Muse track, Plug-in Baby, and it sounds like this. Alright, so this is a very, very busy riff. This is pretty much straight 8th notes all the way through with the occasional 16th note thrown in. We're pretty much running scales here in a very particular way. This riff is best played with alternate picking, and really this is going to take a while to remember because there's a lot of notes in this riff. So this riff is a 6-bar phrase that's repeated twice, and then you repeat the first 2 bars again before holding the last note, and then it goes into the verse. So this riff starts on the 8th fret of the D string. We're playing the 8, then the 9. Then we're playing the 6 on the G, and back to the 8 on the D. Then we're playing the 9 on the D, the 6 and 7 on the G, the 9 on the D again. So let me just play through that bar once more. You can see there's almost like a scalic exercise-like pattern to this. So once you get that under your fingers, the rest of the riff will flow because you are going to be using that sort of pattern all the way through. So that's your first bar. The next bar we're going 6, 7, 9 on the G. Then we're playing the 7 on the B. And we're doing a hammer onto the 8 and pulling it off again. That hammer on is our first 16th note, but then the note that you pull off to is back to an 8th note. And then we're walking backwards on the G, 9, 7, 6. So put those 2 bars together. At this point, we kind of do the same thing again, but this time we don't start from the 8 of the D, we start from the 9. So you can see it's a very similar phrase. I'm doing 9 on the D, 6, 7 on the G, and back to the 9 on the D. 6, 7, 9 on the G and back to the 6 on the G. Very similar pattern where we just shifted everything up by 1. Then we're going 7, 9 on the G, 7 on the B. The hammer and pull off. Then we're doing 6, 7, 6 on the B. Then the next part is this kind of sweep picking part. We're doing 7 on the B, G, and D. What we don't want to do is we don't want to bar across it and have the notes do this and kind of blur into each other. We still want that separation. So I'm going to roll my fingers. So we're starting on the 7 of the B. We're kind of rolling across the strings rather than just barring straight. Down to that 9 on the A. And then we're just going back up. 7 on the D, 7 on the G, 7 on the B. And then the 9 on the B to finish. So that's that bar. The next bar we're doing a bend on the 9 of the B. That takes up 2 8th notes, so 1 and. Just a half step bend up to the pitch of the 10. 7, 6, 7 on the B. And the same thing on the G. So that's my 6-bar phrase. So let me just go from the start and play that slow. And then at full speed. At that point, then you'll just repeat that for a second time, exactly the same way. And then on the final time, you're just starting the riff again, but you're going like this. So you're just coming back down to that 9 on the D. And hold that across the first part of the verse. So that's quite a tricky riff. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So work very slowly with that one. Play it through slow and then work up the speed. Here's how that sounds slowly in full. The second riff we're going to learn is from the band Audioslave, and this is the riff from the song Cochise. This is a great heavy rock riff using the neck single coil of a guitar. Here's how the riff sounds in full. So this riff was played by Tom Morello, so if you think this sounds a little bit Rage Against the Machine-like, you wouldn't be wrong, because Audioslave was made up of the Rage Against the Machine band, Tom Morello, Brad Wilk, and Timothy Comerford, but with Chris Cornell of Soundgarden singing, so it's no wonder that it has that Rage Against the Machine style stomp. So this riff is not that hard to play, but it's got a great groove, great feel, and it really does hit hard, even though we're using a neck single coil for this. So starting on the 5th fret of the A, we're doing a quick hammer onto the 7th fret. So you don't want to hang on that 5 too long because the 7 really is the note that we're focusing on here. It's almost like the 5th fret is just at the tail end of the bar before, because we really want that 7 to be our impact note. Then we're doing this downward run. So to play that, we're going to be playing 5 on the A, 7 on the E, 5 on the A, 7 on the E. Come down to the 3rd fret of the E, and then the open E. The next half of the riff is pretty much the same, but there's just less notes. So the second half of the riff is the hammer-on, 5 on the A, 7 on the E, and then 3 and open on the low E. There's not a huge amount to learn with that riff. It's quite a simple riff to play, but it's got a lot of power and a lot of groove. So I'm going to play through that now slowly. Alright, the third riff we're going to learn is from the Darkness track, I Believe in a Thing Called Love. This is a great classic rock inspired riff. It's hard to believe that this actually came out 20 years ago now. I still remember when this came out and it was all over all the music channels on TV. It was almost like the kind of grandioseness of classic rock was coming back in a big way. The Darkness really kind of helped bring guitar music back to the central focus in the music world. So here's how this riff sounds in full. So this riff is a really fun but very easy riff. We just need some power chords for this. So we're doing an F sharp power chord on the 2nd fret of the low E string, an A power chord from the open A, which we're playing twice, followed by a B power chord on the 2nd fret twice, playing that B power chord twice more, then going to an E power chord, the B power chord, and the A power chord. Now, before each of these kind of power chord groupings, there's this little muted note. This could be an accidental thing, or maybe like a percussive hit that they added just for impact. You can play the riff without it, but if you're really wanting to dig into the accuracy of the riff, it is there. So we're going to go like this. We're going to play the F sharp, then we're going to hit it right before the A to B change. See, I just did that quick. Then we're doing it again before the B to the E change, before the B, and the A. And then at the end of the riff, there's this little run, which is the 4th fret on the low E string, open 2-4 on the A, and then the open low E. Play that 4 with a little bit of vibrato. You can also add a little harmonic if you want. Just kind of dig it a little bit. You don't want a full pinch, but just kind of brush the string. And add a good bit of vibrato to that note as well. And that's really the whole riff. Power chords with a few muted notes, which you don't have to add. But like I said, if you want this to be really accurate, they are there. And then a single note run at the end. So here's how this sounds full, slowly. Alright, riff number 4 is one that if you're a guitar player who wants to play in a function band, for instance, you're probably going to need to know this riff. This is a riff that I have seen break countless guitar players because it is quite a tricky riff. It does require some finger dexterity, and I know it took me quite a while to get my head around this one as well. And that is the riff for Mr. Brightside by The Killers. The original version of this is tuned to E flat, I'm playing this in standard tuning today. If you want to play along with the record, you need to drop your guitar by a semitone. The riff sounds like this in full. Alright, so there's a lot of stuff going on there. Now, it is quite complicated, but there's an easy method to this riff. So what we're doing is we're taking a D9 chord like this, which is the 5th on the A, the 4th on the D, and the 5th on the G and B. That's a great funk chord. If you're ever playing funk, that's a very useful chord. What we're doing is we're opening up the G. So we're playing it kind of like a C add 9 chord. So we're playing 5 on the A, 4 on the D, open G, 5 on the B. That's our basic chord shape. Now, the first thing you're probably asking is, why am I playing it there? That's just to get the chord shape in your head, because this really is a chordal riff based around a D9 chord. But what we're doing is we're shifting that up an octave to the 17th fret. So we've got 17 on the A string, 16 on the D, the open G, and 17 on the B. And we're also going to need the open E. Now the G isn't going to be played open, that's just for reference with the shape. This is where it gets tricky. The note on the G that we need to play is the 19th fret, which we need to bring our little finger over like this for. So you can see this is quite a complex finger arrangement here. So I'm playing 17, 16, 19, 17, and then I've got an open E on the top. So that alone is a challenge. Once you've got your head around doing that, the rest of the riff is almost quite easy to play. So then we're just bringing this picking pattern in, which is A, D, G, D, and then E, B, G, D. That open E creates a weird contrast where it makes it sound like it's going much lower before coming back up. It's quite a clever riff in that sense. Now, what I did there was a slightly simpler way of playing this. So I'm going to show you the proper way first of all, and then I'm going to show you a simpler way to play this. So the proper way is at the end of each descending run, we open up the D string again like this. Then I'm going to change chord. So these two fingers, my third finger and my fourth finger, are not going to move for the entire riff. What is going to move are my first and second fingers. So my first chord is the D. That open D at the end, that's my cue to move. I then bar across the 14 on the A and D strings. So I'm playing this C sharp note now with this F sharp underneath. Same pattern. And the open again. And then the final thing I'm doing is bringing my first finger now down to the 15 of the low E and putting my middle finger on the 16 of the D. I'm doing the same pattern, but this time I'm using the low E instead of the A string. So that's D, C sharp, G. So really I'm always playing that 14 on the D as well, but I do have to change my finger arrangement each time like this. So I'm always kind of moving which finger's going where. There are really 3 simple moves to this riff though. Once you've got that first part in position, then you're just taking the middle finger away and using your index finger for those 2 notes. And then the next one, then you bring your index finger to the 15, bring the middle finger back in. So it's 1, 2, 3. Notice still my third and fourth fingers are not moving. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The hard part is just that open D string. On the first 2 chord moves, it's quite easy, because it's when I'm literally moving shape. But on the third one, my root note is staying the same, so I've just got to lift my middle finger each time. So I'm moving through that slowly. then full speed. So that's how you play that riff, but there is a simpler way that we can play this, and that is to just ignore the open D note. Just play whatever note you're currently fretting. So you would do this. So I'm just coming back to the chord shape without actually taking my index finger off. That is technically wrong because I'm now playing an F sharp note in place of a D note. But what we're actually kind of doing here is a form of harmony, because the F sharp note is the major third of a D chord. So while it's not actually the note in the song, it kind of works because it harmonizes with what the D note would be. So we're kind of playing like a major third harmony instead. But it's actually much easier because we're not actually having to take that finger off at any point and play the open string. So when we put that in context, it sounds like this. And at speed. You especially don't notice it when you play the riff at full speed because there's so much going on. You don't really notice that that open D isn't there. So yeah, that's a nice easy way you can play Mr. Brightside as well, or you can throw those open D notes in for the full challenge. All right, riff number 5 is from the nu metal classic Last Resort by Papa Roach, and it goes like this. So for this, you'll notice I've changed guitar. I'm now using my Shergold Guitars Provocateur. This is tuned to drop D tuning. So it's the same as standard tuning, but the low E string is now tuned down a full step to a D. That just gives me a little bit more to play with in the low end. I've got some additional low notes available to me. So this riff starts with some chord stabs that you heard in the first part there. So to play these, we're starting with the 9th fret of the low D. You can think of that as the low E if you want, if that's easier for you. Play that with your 3rd finger. Use your 1st finger to play the 7 on the A string, and then your little finger to play the 9 on the other D string. We're playing that twice. Then bring it down 2 frets to the 7 and the 5. Down another 2 frets to the 5 and 3. Down 1 fret to the 4 and 2. So that's... On that last one, I just go back up to the 7 and the 5. So that chord pattern happens all the way underneath the riff that I'm about to play now. So this part of the riff is where the fun really begins. This is the really busy line that you heard. Now, this is quite a busy line, but you can break this down into basically a repeating riff with a moving bass note. So the riff we're playing is this. So that's 10, 9, 10 on the A string, 9 on the D, 10, 9, 10 on the A. Now, if you get that pattern in your head, that's basically the riff. And what we're doing is we're just changing the note that precedes that every time. So on the first repeat, it's the 7 of the A string. So I just played that 7. And then I played that little melody I showed you. The next note is going to be the 12 on the low D. Same melody though. Then the 10 on the low D. And the 9 on the low D. So basically combining those two things. We've got the descending bass line. And that little melody. So 7, 12 on the D, 10, 9. You want to alternate pick this one all the way through. Try and keep every note as even as you possibly can. So I'm going to play that through now once more. Riff number 6 was sticking with the drop D theme and learning the riff from the Velvet Revolver track Slither, and it sounds like this. So I love this track. This riff blew my mind when I first heard it, because to me this was like kind of like the rebirth of Guns N' Roses. It was some of the original guys coming together with Scott Weiland from the Stone Temple Pilots in this really great new band. This is a really fun drop D riff. It sort of ascends and descends the low D and A strings. So this is a really easy riff to learn. It's all based around the low D and A strings, except for the little lick at the end. You don't have to add the lick in if you want. You can just carry on playing the main riff. But I've thrown in the lick just because it is there. So if you want to learn that, you can. So this is quite easy to learn. It's very straight. We're doing straight 8th notes all the way. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But the riff kind of sounds like it grooves a lot more than it actually does, which is a really interesting kind of riff idea, because it sounds like it has this big swing to it, but what we're playing is actually pretty straight. So we're starting off with the open low D and A. In drop D tuning, that kind of replaces a power chord. Then we're playing 3 and 4. Then we're playing open again and doing 6 and 7. And then open and 10. Then the second bar, we're just going backwards. We're going open, 6, 7. Open 5. Open 3, 4. So let's put those two halves together. So that's how to play the riff, but if you want to add the lick at the end, then keep watching. The lick actually just mirrors the main riff, but 2 octaves higher. So we're starting on the 12 of the D, and then playing 10 and 11 on the G. 12 on the D again, 9 and 10 on the B. 12 on the D again, 13 on the B. That's the same as that run. So when I play this lick, I just keep my 3rd finger in place on that 12th fret of the D, and then I work around that then. So I use my index and middle finger for the notes on the G. Just my index finger for the 9 and 10. You could use your index and middle, but I've always just moved the index finger. Then my little finger for the 13. Then the lick just does the same as the main riff. It goes backwards. So it's 12 on the D, 9 and 10 on the B. 12 on the D, 12 on the G. 12 on the D, 10 on the G, and we hang that note. So here's the lick slow. So if you want to put that together with the main riff, you do it on the 4th repeat, and it would sound like this. For the 7th and final riff, we're back in standard tuning. This is from Gary Clarke Jr.'s song, Bright Lights. There's 2 parts to this riff, and it goes like this. Gary Clarke Jr. is a really unique guitar player. He fuses elements of blues with other musical styles like hip-hop, R&B, and there's even some kind of garage rock in there because he's a big fan of fuzz in his music too. So this song is a great example of kind of almost a Motown-ish kind of groove with a real heavy, nasty fuzz riff over the top. So the main groove of this is kind of based around A minor. We're sort of playing like an A minor, and then we're doing an A minor 7 sus4 chord. So that is a lot easier to play than it sounds. We're playing these chords as these kind of reduced Hendrixy style triad chords. So for this, I'm always going to be playing the A root with my thumb. Then I'm playing the A minor triad, 7 on the D, and then barring the 5 on the G and B strings. The A and the high E are muted. So the groove is going between the triad and the root. Notice I'm muting, or not muting so much, but I'm releasing the pressure. Getting this groove right is essential for this riff, because what you don't want is this. It's not that, because that's too messy. Once you've got that groove, then you can start piecing it together. So the first thing we're going to do is just start that groove. And you'll notice that little change we did there at the end. This is where I go into the A minor 7 sus4 chord. So it's the same thing, but I'm basically just taking my third finger off the 7 of the D, and it's going on to the 7 of the G instead. So what I'm doing there is I'm playing this kind of A minor 7 chord, and then I'm hitting that sus4 note. So there's that little movement there at the end. And the next bar of this riff is just the same thing, but backwards. It's the A minor 7 sus4. You go back to the A minor 7, back to the A minor. So we're kind of just doing this groove with this alternation between A minor and A minor 7 sus4 each time passing through the A minor 7. So the riff would go like this. And now for the fuzz riff that you heard over the top of that. This is a really fun, quite simple riff, but you are going to need some finger strength here because we're doing some full step bends on the A string. We're starting off with 5 on the E, 3 on the A, and then a very, very slow, full bar, full step bend on the 5th of the A string. We're bending that up to an E note. Gary Clarke really drags that bend up. Then we're doing another bend, but we're also picking it again and releasing it. Coming back to that 5th on the E. On the final 8th note of that bar, we then hit a double stop on the 5 of the D and G. And let that ring over the next bar. Then the second repeat starts the same way. But then this time, instead of doing the bend up and then picking it in and releasing it, we're just playing the 5 on the D string, then playing the 5 on the A, and doing a bend and release in one movement, then going to the 5 on the A. And then this time we are still playing that double stop right at the end on the and of 4. But on the 4, we're hitting the A note, which is the 5th fret of the low E. So the second half goes. So it's quite simple, but really there's a lot of finger strength involved in this because of those big bends. So here's how the fuzz part sounds in full. So that's a really fun one. There are two very distinctive parts to that. Obviously, you can't play them at the same time because they're tonally different as well, because one is soaked in fuzz and the other one is sort of a cleanish, crunchy tone. But you can definitely have some fun with that track. It's a really fun song to learn. So there you go. There is how to play 7 of the greatest riffs of the 21st century as voted for by Music Radar readers. So like I said, there's a link down below where you can go over to the Music Radar website and check out the results of the poll. This is 5 years old. So obviously there's going to be some riffs that have happened since 2018 that aren't going to be included in that list because they didn't exist at that point. So if there are any riffs that have happened since then that you think need to be included, let me know down below in the comments. But I took these 7 from that list of 50. They were just my favorite 7 from that list. So you can have some fun with those. If you want to learn more about any of these riffs, there's also a link to the supporting article for this video, which is also on the Music Radar website. That's also linked down below, where I just talk about how to play each of these riffs in a little more detail. And then if you want the tabs for these, you can get those by hitting my Patreon link down there as well. Let me know what your favorite 21st century guitar riffs are down below in the comments. While you're down there doing that, don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching as always.